Walpurgis Night now. Time to once again spread the tradition. I loved April 30th, Walpurgis Nacht, at my uncle's place. It marked for us the official end of winter, whether there was snow on the ground or not. And some years there was. But snow or not, there would be a fire in the fire pit, steaks on the barbie, and lots of beer and wine. Although I had to make do with Coke Zero. My uncle wanted to bring back Walpurgis Nacht as a spring version of Halloween. On Walpurgis Nacht, as on All Hallows Eve, the forces of darkness hold sway. We light bonfires, not just to welcome the spring, but to keep the satanic legions at bay. We also play music to drive them off. I should mention here that my uncle's idea of appropriate music was the Symphonie Fantastique by Berlioz, not Black Sabbath. On Walpurgis Nacht, the witches held Sabbath on Brocken, highest peak in Hartz Mountains, and we, in turn, will celebrate this evening by sharing tales of the specters of the past. Through us, they will once again walk the earth. So, after the eating was over and the drinking well underway, my uncle and friends would sit around the fire pit and swap stories, folk tales of ghosts and goblins, Baba Yaga and the witches, werewolves and vampires, and of course the whole secret commonwealth of the little people in the gentry. No zombies or serial killers allowed, Uncle would intone solemnly, his wine glass raised in salute. Once when I asked him why he did it, Uncle turned serious and said, Walpurgis Nacht is celebrated in many European countries. I want to see if I can turn Walpurgis Night in North America into a sort of non-commercial Halloween, but with an emphasis on friendship, feasting, and sharing stories. I trust you will help me spread the tradition. I said I'd try, not that I really understood my uncle's motivation. I only knew it was a good time and meant winter was finally over. Or almost over. Most of the guests were Uncle's colleagues from the university, plus students, neighbors, even a few of my friends, those who didn't think the whole thing was too weird. I knew almost everyone there, so I was a bit surprised when a fat man I'd never seen before came up the driveway and spoke to me. Can you direct me to the master of this establishment? You mean Uncle Nate? He bowed by way of an answer. I had been around the side of the house, putting some trash in the disposal bin, when he appeared out of the darkness. He had a gentle voice and an ingratiating smile on his plump face, but there was something about him that I didn't like, although I couldn't have explained why. Maybe it was the black cloak, which made him look like a monk or something. But Uncle Nate had many unusual friends, so I took him around back, where I found the master of the establishment, standing a little to one side and checking that all our guests had suitable refreshments. Uncle, this man was asking for you. It sounded stiff and formal to my ears, but it also sounded better than, you know this guy? I could tell Uncle did not. Hello, he said cautiously while extending his hand. Todd. Oh, greetings, Todd, and you're with? I'm an inhabitant of Carcosa. Uncle Nate threw back his head and erupted with laughter, his short gray beard wagging with sheer delight. He pumped the hand of the hefty stranger and said, Welcome, Todd. Any fan of Bierce and Chambers is welcome here. Todd smiled sardonically. But I am not a mere fan. I've actually come from Carcosa. Uncle Nate was still enjoying the joke. What, all the way from the shores of Lake Hallie? Carcosa is closer than you think, Todd said with a patronizing smile, which confirmed me in my dislike for him. Uncle Nate handed Todd a glass of red wine. "I must applaud you, sir, for your efforts to bring the tradition of Walpurgis Night back from the dead," Todd continued. "It is for that very reason I've decided to begin my campaign right here. This wine is excellent, by the way." "Campaign?" Uncle Nate was mystified. Todd spread his plump hands. "Voila! It is my intention to spread the tradition of Walpurgis, to once again make it a night when the dead are able to cross into the land of the living and make riot." Uncle Nate laughed again. "That sounds like a lot of fun." Todd's broad face was convulsed by an odd expression, a cross between a grin and a grimace. "That would depend on your definition of fun, but perhaps I could explain myself better by way of a small demonstration." "Fire away," my uncle said, spreading his arms to get everybody's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, our guest, Todd, has something he would like to show us." Uncle Nate bowed towards the fat man, adding, "Take it away, Todd." Todd stretched out one of his plump white hands, on which he balanced his wine glass, half full of ruby-colored liquid. Some of the other guests, but not all, gathered around, some curious, some not so much, all wondering if they were going to see anything of interest. "Behold," Todd said. At first, nothing happened. But then, slowly, the glass began to levitate and move away from Todd, who stared at it fixedly. "Great sleight of hand," boomed Jeff, a loud and rather geeky grad student who was a near match to Todd in terms of girth. "Sleight of hand," Todd said disdainfully. "This is the work of earthbound spirits." The wine glass continued floating until it hovered directly over Jeff's shaggy head. "Don't," I said to myself. But it did. The glass tipped completely over, showering Jeff with vino. For a few moments, there was stunned silence. Even Jeff was too flummoxed to react. He simply stood there as the blood-red wine ran down his wrinkled forehead and into his watery gray eyes. It was Todd who broke the silence. "I don't think the spirits are partial to you." "Why, you dirty son of a bitch," Jeff sputtered. I don't think the poor guy knew exactly what to do, but humiliation compelled him to do something, so he took what was supposed to be a menacing step towards Todd, who merely smiled. Suddenly, Jeff sputtered again, much harder. He appeared to be gasping for breath, and had his hands around his own throat, as if he was choking himself, or clutching at a pair of invisible hands, which were choking him. "Now I know the spirits don't really like you," crooned Todd, as Jeff's eyes bulged out and his face began to turn purple. "I think you've really offended them." Uncle Nate was slow to anger, but he was angry now. He took a step towards Todd and said, "Are you doing this?" "Me?" Todd asked in a voice of innocence. "It's more likely to be the spirits at work." "Then make them stop, now," my uncle said, trying not to lose his temper. "Well, perhaps if this, fellow was willing to apologize." The invisible hands seemed to relax for a moment, but Jeff was too busy gasping for breath and rubbing at his sore neck to say anything. He stood there, swaying and staring at Todd, with eyes which bulged with both terror and hatred. "Now say you're sorry," Todd coaxed. "I think you'd better leave," Uncle Nate interrupted, pushing himself between Todd and his snuffling victim. "Really?" Todd asked innocently. "Aren't you afraid that will anger the spirits even more?" Uncle Nate reached out to take Todd's arm, preliminary to marching him off the property, when a number of bottles and glasses arose from their own accord, followed by plates, cutlery, lawn chairs, tables, even the burgers cooking on the grill. At the same time, the backyard was rocked by a number of loud booming noises, each clap making the furniture, the trees, Even the walls shake with the force of the concussion. Words in a dripping, reddish-yellow fluid appeared on the walls of the house and the garage. "You are all going to die." And lastly, the fire in the fire pit turned emerald green. All of the guests, about 50 people, jumped up from their lawn chairs and looked around, eyes wide with fright. Uncle Nate let his hand drop, saying, in a voice of wonder, "What is—" "Food fight," Todd chortled. Suddenly the air was filled with flying paper plates, burgers, hot dogs, plus zooming containers of ketchup, mustard and relish, and, worse, glasses, wine bottles, and beer cans. In the whirlwind maelstrom, there was no alternative but to hit the deck, only to find the wet ground covered with broken shards. Jeff had suddenly reanimated and was stumbling towards his portly antagonist. Right fist raised to strike, when, howling with pain and indignation, he slapped his hand to the side of his neck. A jet of blood spurted through Jeff's fingers, spraying several bystanders with gore. It was obvious that an artery in his neck had been slashed, although I couldn't see how it could have happened. The big geek took a step forward, staggered, fell to his knees, and then collapsed face down on the patio, his head quickly surrounded by a growing pool of bright red. Next to me, a female grad student vomited explosively. I took a quick look around for Uncle Nate as I dodged the projectiles slicing through the air. He stood, still as a statue, his face white, gazing towards Todd with a blank look in his dark eyes, not flinching or reacting when a yellow plastic mustard container whacked him on the side of the head, followed by a mercifully empty beer can. He was being slowly murdered. I reacted without thinking, taking a quick run and hitting Todd from behind with a combination body check football tackle. Todd's huge black figure collapsed like a sack, and he sprawled face down on the hard concrete of the patio, like a tree felled by a lumberjack. I expected his flesh to feel soft. He was a very fat man, but instead it felt squishy, like his body consisted of something pretending to be flesh, but wasn't. He was also extremely silent. I expected him to bellow or curse and swear, but nothing happened. Nothing. As I stood up, I noticed all the flying debris was grounded, and the booming noises had stopped. I saw Uncle Nate kneeling over Jeff and trying to take his pulse. Raising his head, he caught my eye, his face anguished as he whispered, "He's gone." "He did it," I said, pointing at the fallen monk. I grabbed the back of Todd's cowl and gave a mighty heave, trying to drag the fat man to his feet, only to find the cloak empty in my hands. What the hell was as far as I got before everything erupted in white noise. I called it white noise, as that was the only way I was able to describe sound so intense, so loud, so all-encompassing it stunned the senses. Blinding magnesium light stunned my eyes, and my body was assaulted by waves of high pressure, like I was caught in an explosion. But it was only noise, white noise. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it still didn't shut out the percussive wall of energy that left me overwhelmed and unable to think. I shut my eyes, but could still perceive the intense white glare, as if I was gazing directly into a nuclear blast furnace. I could sense, rather than see, that people were dropping all around me, and I could feel something running down my face and the sides of my neck, from both my eyes and my ears, but I didn't know if what I was feeling were tears or blood. I fell to my knees, screaming in agony, but I was unable to hear my wailing over the wall of noise. I teetered back and forth, almost ready to pitch forward on my face, unconscious or dead. And then it stopped. Dead. To be replaced by an insidious, whispering sound. the flapping of myriad wings. To be continued.